know I just spent a whole section essentially praising the writing of the human characters in these two games, but I'll take a step back and admit that they are not the pinnacle of non-binary representation. The fact that so many people reinterpret these characters as cis boys or girls, cis meaning not trans, FYI, the fact that I felt compelled to make a video explaining all this proves it's less than perfect. And most will argue there's a difference between explicit, implied, and unintentional representation in media. So, do we know for certain that Toby Fox created the humans to be canonically non-binary? Well, if our standard of proof is a statement from him directly saying so, then no. But there's no such confirmation that he meant for their genders to be up to interpretation either. In the absence of the author's words, or even in spite of them if you look at it through the death of the author lens, the text speaks for itself. And well, I've already laid out how the games present these characters and their gender identities. Now, before you start typing, I've heard the claims that Toby once tweeted that Frisk and Kara's genders are up to the players to decide. But everywhere I've looked, I've never found a link to or screenshot of said tweet, meaning it was either a faked tweet that got shared around, or just a rumor from the start. Any tweet or other post Toby's written having remotely to do with this topic has since been deleted. And if he deleted it, doesn't that suggest he no longer stands behind what he said? He could have reiterated his past stance at any point since, but he hasn't. Some may bring up the one tweet where Toby suggested to name the fallen human, Kara, your own name, as evidence that you are meant to project yourself onto these characters. However, I think you could argue just as easily that doing this adds to the impact of when Frisk, the character you physically control, confirms themselves to be their own person with their own name, rather than a mold for you to pour yourself into. And though Kara does make it clear that they as a character are separate from you, the whole no mercy ending monologue does hit harder when the person reprimanding you for their sins, who describes themselves as the feeling you get when your stats increase, shares your name. Not to mention that Toby once tweeted that his tweets aren't canon, though that tweet in itself ended in a joke, so it's debatable how serious his statement was. While looking for that non-existent tweet I mentioned at the start of this section, I came across this interview Toby did for the now-defunct OuterMode.com back in September of 2015, and took particular note of this passage. Interviewer: the protagonist in Undertale is of ambiguous gender. This is also true of many of the monsters he/she encounters along the way. Was this a design choice? And what role does androgyny play in your vision of the world? Toby Fox? Skip. While this technically doesn't confirm or deny anything either way, how hard would it have been for Toby to say, well, the protagonist is meant to have their gender be up to the player's interpretation? I figure he would have gotten less backlash for that than he would have for definitively saying that Frisk is meant to be non-binary, though I doubt that would have stopped people from misgendering them as male or female anyway. Then again, the article does start with the interviewer saying, I told Toby Fox to skip questions he didn't find interesting, and boy did he take me at my word. So maybe he just felt there wasn't anything worthwhile to say on the subject. Based on this tweet from his old account, he didn't know that they would publish the questions he chose not to answer, so take from that what you will. I admit, even after everything I've talked about up to this point, I can't say with certainty that Frisk and Kara's genders were never meant to be up to the player's choice, because we can't know exactly what Toby Fox was thinking when he designed them. And I doubt he would want to make a statement on it at this point. I'd love if he did either way, just so we could put this to rest, but I can't really blame him. The same applies to Chris, for now. However, if the rest of Deltarune ends up going in the direction I suggested in the previous section, I honestly would not be surprised if there's a moment where Chris confirms they are non-binary, as a show of agency and individualism akin to Frisk telling Azrael their real name. I wouldn't really call it a theory, and it's hard to speculate what the other chapters of the game will be like at all, based on what relatively little we have, plus that cliffhanger ending. But I wouldn't have mentioned it here if I didn't think it had any validity. Plus then I wouldn't have to cringe while watching basically every Deltarune theory video where they refer to Chris by he and him pronouns, or if you're MacPat, switching between him and she/her when using they them would only be easier. Come on, guys! Sorry about that. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the people who've watched this video through up to this point. However, we're still a little ways off from the end. There's one big question that has yet to be addressed.